Good morning and welcome. I'm delighted to have with us today Andrea Zahumensky, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at KFC. Joining me today is, of course, my colleague, Raghu Iyengar. He's a distinguished professor here at the Wharton School. He's in marketing. He also runs our customer analytics group that we've got. And so, Raghu, Andrea, let's go ahead and get started. And Andrea, I'm going to start off by asking you to sort of give us a little bit of your background and how long you've been in your current position at KFC.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me first, Dave and Raghu. I'm really excited about this conversation. So I have been in my current position for a little over 3 years now. And before I joined KFC, I spent 20 years at Procter & Gamble, working on brands like Crest and Oral-B and Pampers. And Raghu, I actually started my career in IT and data analytics. So it's interesting that your background is in data analytics. So I've got a tiny sliver of a background in that also. And I live here in Louisville, and my responsibility really for KFC US, ultimately what I'm measured on is driving sales overnight and developing the brand over time.
That's a great expression that you had, of working on it day by day, but working for the long term as well. So fantastic. You know, the heart of what it is that we want to be talking to you about is how KFC has been affected by this pandemic. And so we'd like to get some sense of that. And how has it, we see various different people being affected. Obviously, people's ability to eat in restaurants has been affected. Mm-hmm. Spend a little bit of time telling us how it is that KFC has been directly affected.
Well, I mean, everything changed, right? For our customers, for our team members, for our franchisees, for our communities. And, we had to respond with a lot of agility as a brand when this pandemic hit. And what we found was that we actually could provide a real solution for families during this time, that our buckets of fried chicken really could provide comfort, could provide a home cooked meal that people didn't have to cook when they're overwhelmed, right, with everything that they had to do. And then we also found that we could really provide real solutions for our communities, for our team members. And so we really doubled down also in our goodwill efforts, providing care for our team members. We developed a program around providing 1 million pieces of chicken into our communities, first for frontline workers, then for teachers, and really kind of provided those authentic and real solutions. And what we found is by being able to do that, and again, really going back to what can we really do to help, our drive-thrus have remained open. We've actually been able, our business has been able to thrive during this pandemic. And we've actually been able to grow our sales overnight as well as our brand over time during this time.
Great. Thank you, Andrea, again for joining us. One of the things that you brought up very nicely, as Dave pointed out, which is, of course, there is the short-term sales, but of course, there's, one of your, probably one of the big things that you're in charge of is how to build the brand over time. Would love to hear from your perspective, especially in the last year or so. Clearly consumers probably want a brand that is very trusted, which is KFC. But what else have you been doing over time in the last year, which can really enhance the brand? Would love to know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple of things. Number one, we've provided real tangible solutions. So one of the things that we learned early on in the pandemic is that families, if they were going to leave the kind of safety and security of their house, they wanted to take care of more than one meal. Mm-hmm. Well, we know that something unique about our brand is that we reheat really well, right? Our products can be used, the next day. So we created a really simple solution for families called the $30 fill up, which is a bucket for today, a meal for today, chicken for today, and tenders for tomorrow. You can get that all for $30. And we have seen that provide a real tangible solution. Now that's helped sales overnight, but it's also helped brand over time because it's our products really being relevant during this time. And then the second thing I would say for a brand over time that's been really important is us doubling down on our communities and how we can really provide for our communities. I mean, during this last year, that kind of K-shaped economy of haves and have-nots has only exacerbated, right? It was already a trend that's just exacerbated. And it's made it even more important to be a brand of the people, right? And we've really committed to that in the last year with our, we first launched for a $400,000 donation in that kind of the first weeks of the pandemic. We were one of the first brands to come out with a meaningful donation to a long-term partner, Blessings in a Backpack, that provides food for kids who really need food when they're away from organized school, where they count on a lot of their meals. We then provided 1 million pieces of chicken for frontline workers, and we did that through our restaurants in our communities where our franchisees own and operate their restaurants. We also provided grocery assistance to our team members. We came back and did another 1 million pieces of chicken for our teachers. And as we've watched those brand over time metrics and KPIs, we have seen this idea that KFC cares for our team members, KFC cares for our communities, KFC cares for people. We have seen a meaningful improvement in those measures with our customers. So we are seeing that as well drive our kind of brand over time and how we measure it.
Wonderful.
Wow, that's just amazing, some of the steps that you've taken, and all the charitable donations that you've done for workers as well as for consumers. It is genuine, I know that, and it has the side benefit of actually helping your brand. And I'm curious, you sort of mentioned looking at the KPIs. How frequently do you measure sort of your brand and how well it's being received by consumers? And did I understand you to say it has been going up during this pandemic, which is great?
Yeah, so we measure our brand every month. Based on our kind of brand over time measures. As you can imagine, there's a little bit of wobble measuring it monthly. So we really look forward to those quarterly updates where we can really see kind of and be more confident in where the trends are going. And I would say it's been a volatile time this last year for all KPIs, right? As customer sentiment has changed.
Right.
And so we've been benchmarking ourselves kind of with the industry. Our sales overnight have performed ahead of industry, and our brand over time, some measures kind of with industry and some measures ahead of industry, depending on the measure.
Wonderful. So Andrea, as you mentioned in the beginning, you and I share this passion for analytics. Of course, your journey has evolved being the chief marketing officer as well. So building on this idea and my being associated with Wharton Customer Analytics, would love to know how data has played a role in the last year or so. What are the things that perhaps you were tracking and you were, maybe there were some innovations that you were thinking of in a year ahead, but you accelerated those? What role perhaps digital has played in your own kind of setting as well? Because with digital, more data comes in and you can perhaps track things better. Would love to know broadly, like how data played a role there.
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think we would all agree that data has never been more important. I think in being able to run your business and really customer expectations of being personalized and understanding who they are and being able to bring real solutions to them. So data's played a role in a couple of really important ways. First of all, we've had to really stay close to just pure customer insight. Mobility has played a really important role in our sales results. So we've actually done regression models looking at mobility and how that correlates with different parts of our business, and then use that to then influence what promotions we run at different times, and actually looking at that on a month by month basis through the last year and kind of having that agility of adjusting which promotions we're running. That's one example. Another example, of course, is e-commerce. So e-commerce has played a really important role in our business. It has grown exponentially, as you can imagine, as we've seen kind of across the industry, as customers have really looked for delivery or low access, being able to order ahead and go in and pick up their meals to have that convenience. And of course, data plays a really important role in kind of building that funnel and then being able to go back and communicate with customers afterwards. And that's only growing. We've actually just this last quarter launched our new KFC.com platform that we've developed that really is kind of world-class, has a world-class marketing tech stack behind it. Our app has just gone live in the App Store in the last few weeks. And so this is going to be an even more important part of how we really pursue modern marketing going forward.
Great, thank you.
So Andrea, this is, it's amazing some of the transformation that you've had to go through. You earlier talked about all the drive-throughs that you had, which I assume is not at all of your restaurants, but is that right?
We have drive-throughs in most of our restaurants have drive-throughs.
Right. And then you just mentioned delivery, and I'm assuming that delivery is something that is new. Are you doing your own delivery, or are you basically supporting or being supported by Grubhub and Uber Eats and DoorDash and those types of services?
So delivery is executed through our aggregator partners for our business.
Okay. And by the way, we just had Uber Eats on that we had done previously.
They're fantastic. They've been fantastic partners to us.
So that's great.
So Andrea, I could imagine, especially again, going back to this idea of looking at data and so on, are there some things that, over time now, thankfully, I'm hoping we're looking toward the positive end now. I mean, with vaccinations going on and hopefully in the next few months, things coming back to somewhat of normalcy. Over the last year or so, as you were starting to project out how things might be and perhaps how customer behavior has changed, but what things perhaps have been sticky and what things might revert back to what they were before? Has there been any thought in terms of what the next few months might start looking like? Would customers come back to the store? And what kinds of planning are you doing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I would say a few things. We have been using that data to understand how do we promote, for example, group occasions. Our group occasions have grown substantially over the last year. As more people have been at home, they've needed to, they're overwhelmed with cooking for their family, 7 days a week, three times a day, which they're normally not doing. And so our group occasions, our bucket meals, really is what the solution for that is, have really never been more relevant than they have been in the last year. And so one of the things we've been looking at as far as data goes is, when do we start to shift a bit of our marketing out of those group occasions and into more lunch and more individual occasions? And so we're starting to, nobody knows what will happen exactly over the next few months, but we're reading all of the signs and starting to think about, in the next several months, how do we start to introduce those individual occasions? We are actually just getting ready to launch nationally our new chicken sandwich. Which we actually tested during the pandemic. We were one of the first brands to actually go out and test out in a market. We did it in May during COVID, because we really had been spending months developing this sandwich that we really believe is the best chicken sandwich we've ever launched. And we needed to get it out into restaurants to make sure that customers also believed this. We were overwhelmed by the results of that market test, and we've been rolling it out across the country since January. And we'll have it we have it in almost all of our restaurants right now, and we're getting ready to kick off a promotion on chicken sandwiches, which is a really big bet for us right now. And we believe that the timing is right to go and enter into those chicken sandwiches. We're going to still support our bucket meals on our group occasion, but we believe that now is the time to kind of support both of those.
So that's great that you've been able to do testing even during this chaotic period. And I guess one of the questions is, how much of that testing is going to apply once things settle down? But my guess is you're going to continue doing some of that testing and sort of see what continues to work as you monitor things going forward.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly.
Go ahead.
Dave, go ahead. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, we tested this sandwich. We saw incredible results back in the summer when we tested it. And as we rolled it across the country, so far we've seen pretty consistent results with that test. Now we'll see as we get into the spring and our big promotional window, and we're going to continue to monitor that, obviously very closely. But we are seeing some consistency, at least in this launch.
So a couple times you have mentioned the word agility.
Yes.
And I want to come back to that because, this pandemic slammed everybody and we had to adjust. And you've talked about some of the things that you've done. I'm sort of curious about your balance between, suddenly having to shift and do things and strategy and thinking about that long-term strategy. And how have you sort of balanced those two?
So I would say the number one thing that we have done is just been maniacal about staying close to customer insights. So early on in the pandemic, we had another promotion actually planned that Thursday when kind of everything shut down. It's kind of become one of those where will you win moments. And we everything shut down, and we had another promotion planned for that Sunday. That was Thursday. And we put a war room together, and and that whole event was planned around live sports and all the things that were not happening. And we said we cannot do that. And so we actually looked at customer trends from around the world. We're a big global business. And we understood that in places like China, people were really moving to group occasions and bucket businesses. So we very quickly, within 4 days, converted all of our materials over to all our group occasions and bucket businesses, every single piece of content. My team is unbelievable how they were able to pull this off. And someone would have asked me beforehand, I would have said that's impossible. And that really paid off, again, staying close to the customer. Then we learned this idea of wanting to really consolidate trips, and we launched the $30 fill up, really based on that customer insight and what our product could provide. And we've found, as long as we're keeping those customer insights in front of us and really staying true to how can our brand authentically provide a solution, that is how we're winning and kind of staying ahead of the industry. So that, to me, is how we're balancing, okay, when do we need to be agile and change our strategy, and when do we need to kind of stay the course. And as long as we're keeping those insights kind of as our compass, that really is making the biggest difference. And I would say mixing that with, again, what's authentic about our brand. Another example I'll give you, which is kind of a fun one, is as we got to the end of the calendar year, we really, I think people were really just kind of exhausted, right, from all of the doom and gloom, and it was just really a tough time. We were having another kind of resurgence. And we were kind of reading the room, and we had been working on a project with Lifetime, and we had to kind of make the decision, do we launch this or do we not? And what we really found from consumers is they really needed a little bit of escapism. So we launched a mini movie, the first of its kind, in the middle of a pandemic, called A Recipe for Seduction. And we partnered, you mentioned Uber Eats, we partnered with Uber Eats to provide a really compelling offer in Uber Eats to do dinner and a movie. And we just saw customers go crazy over this. Our fans just go nuts. It was one of our biggest kind of social engagement and brand moments that we've had on the brand. And I think it was, again, because we were able to read the room, really understand where were customers, what did they really need, and we were able to provide kind of this little bit of escapism, a little fun, it had all, in 15 minutes we packed in everything you'd expect from a Lifetime movie, all the twists and turns and fun, and we just saw people respond really excitedly to it.
Wonderful. So Andrea, one of the things that Dave and I, when we've been talking to leaders like yourselves, we've seen is that, of course, looking at customers and so on, but also looking internally to make sure that the employees that you have, they've also gone through a very tough year. So would love to hear more about your thoughts about, how to keep employees motivated during this time, and kind of what steps are you taking internally within the company to kind of that they also see, hopefully light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, so I would say this has probably been, of all the challenges that we had, maybe the most important challenge. Our culture at KFC is really a family culture. Our restaurants are mostly owned by small business owners. which really drives this kind of family culture that we have. And so it's been really important, I would say, as much as we have to stay in touch with what's happening with our customers, we have to stay even more in touch with what's happening with our employees. Really, you know, in the beginning of all of my team meetings, I would say we talked through the priorities, and the number one priority was always, number one, we have to take care of each other. And that may look like just phoning a friend and checking on someone. You know, it may look like taking a mental health day for yourself, because we need to, and we provided that flexibility. In fact, even as a corporation, we proactively gave people mental health days. Even in December, we, you know, shut down for a day versus like take it whenever you want. Or like, no, we're going to shut down kind of everything for the day, so that everyone can really take a break. So really providing those outlets for people and making it kind of customized based on what people really need.
So that's great. And it sounds, you know, you consistently talked about what the things are that you've done internally. And I think that's wonderful. I think as our last question that we have for you today is, I'm curious if there's any one sort of message or takeaway that you'd want to communicate to others that are leading in their company. What would be the main takeaway that you've got from this past year that you would like to pass on to others?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one most important thing, and I think it's more important than ever, is to really be authentic. Be authentic to your brand, be authentic to your culture, and then understand the insights about your team members, about your customers, about your communities. And if you can find a way to find solutions that are really authentic to who you are as a brand, I think that's where you're going to win, not just sales overnight, but also brand over time, and really build your brand over time.
Yeah, I think that message is very, very true. And thanks for passing that on to others. We really appreciate you spending the time with us today. Keep doing what you're doing, because it sounds like it's been fabulous, and stay safe. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dave and Raghu. This was so fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Great. Take care. Bye-bye.